Gumho Station no longer feels like a station. It feels like a place the world has already abandoned. Blood, broken luggage, scattered coins, and silence are all that remain after the massacre. Most survivors choose to leave, each carrying fear in a different direction. But Kim Dok-ja does not move with the crowd. He stays with the few people who still have enough strength to follow a plan. Among them is Jung Hee-won, a woman whose presence feels strangely inevitable, as though the story has been waiting for her to stand beside him. Dok-ja spends the coins gathered after battle, strengthening his body and magic power, because sentiment cannot stop claws, blades, or starvation. Then the system appears again. Main Scenario 2, Meeting. The objective is simple: travel through the tunnel and reach the first main base at Chungmuro Station. Simple objectives are always the most suspicious, because in this world every clear destination is just another trap wearing the shape of hope. The tunnel to Chungmuro is a living wound. Ground rats swarm from the dark, draining the survivors step by step. At Yaksu Station, the bodies tell a worse story. Not every corpse was killed by monsters. Some were cut down by human hands. Dok-ja understands what that means. Yu Jung-hyuk has passed through here. Then Dok-ja disappears above ground into poison fog, leaving his companions confused and worried. He claims it is a private religious errand, but the truth is far more dangerous. Near a forgotten statue, Dok-ja finds sealed constellation power. Bi-hyun watches in horror as Dok-ja raises his weapon and shatters the sacred symbol. To others, it is blasphemy. To Dok-ja, it is a shortcut. He steals relics linked to Samyongdang, endures celestial outrage, then smooths it over with praise so carefully placed that anger turns into sponsorship. It is the first clear proof that Dok-ja does not merely survive the system. He negotiates with it, cheats it, flatters it, and when necessary, breaks it. Before the group can settle into momentum, the world folds inward. A sub-scenario activates. Welcome, prison. 1 hour to escape. Unknown failure. The survivors are thrown into a mental space that attacks memory instead of flesh. Nausea spreads. Panic rises. Lee Hyun-sung, a trained soldier, breaks under the weight of guilt and orders he can no longer understand. Gil-young curls up, calling for a mother who cannot answer. Dok-ja hears a voice warning him to stay silent about what he sees. Then his exclusive skill activates. Fourth wall rises between him and the prison, muting the madness that would have swallowed anyone else. But Dok-ja does not stop at defense. He uses the power taken from Samyongdang and activates Destroy Evil, tearing down the sub-scenario itself. The prison collapses in light. For one breath, it feels like victory. Then, footsteps echo. A woman in hanbok appears with a sword, and the fragile relief dies instantly. The woman in hanbok is not merely angry. Her crimson eyes reveal demon slaying, a skill dangerous enough to make Dok-ja move immediately. He orders Yu Sang-ha to protect Jung Hee-won, because one unconscious ally in the wrong moment can become a funeral. The sub-scenario reward arrives, but Dok-ja does not relax. He knows the prison is not finished with them. Specters appear, phantom enemies of a high grade, and the survivors are forced into another battle before they can even breathe. When the fighting ends, Lee Hyun-sung wakes in panic, desperate to prove he is himself again. Specter crystals are recovered, rare stones that will matter later, but the emotional cost is worse than the physical one. Gil-young stands unsteadily, broken by what he saw inside that mental cage. Dok-ja pats his head gently, a small human gesture in a world that punishes softness. Then the group moves again toward Chungmuro, wounded, exhausted, and in no condition for the figure waiting in the tunnel ahead. The figure ahead is Lee Ji-hee, a girl too young to carry the title she has earned, and too dangerous to dismiss because of it. She claims the tunnel as her hunting ground, sword ready, eyes sharpened by a past Dok-ja already knows. The system reveals what she is: scarred sword demon, sponsored by the maritime war god, armed with sword training, demon slaying, absolute sense, ghost walk, and future importance far beyond this station. She is one of the pieces Yu Jung-hyuk needs for battles that have not happened yet. Dok-ja recognizes both her value and her danger. After a tense exchange, she leads them through the tunnel instead of cutting them down. The second main scenario completes. Coins arrive, and Chungmuro Station opens before them. But the moment they enter, the atmosphere changes. This is not a base. This is a battlefield, with rules already written by people who arrived earlier. Chungmuro is full of survivors, but no one here is safe. Some drink because fear has become unbearable. Some threaten newcomers because cruelty is cheaper than courage. People speak of rooms for rent, green zones, and an alliance of landlords controlling the lower floors. Safe space has become property. Property has become law. Law has become violence. Dokja also discovers that Yu Junghyuk's influence has already spread. A female companion of his speaks of him like a master, and nervous subordinates watch Dokja's group while trying to understand whether these newcomers are friends or enemies. Dokja plays along, claiming a closeness to Yu Junghyuk that is true in one sense and absurd in another. Nearby, survivors fight over marked green zones, and gatekeepers block access to basic spaces. Dokja senses that someone connected to the 10 evils may be among them. Then, Gilyoung moves suddenly toward danger, and the station's hidden social order bares its teeth. The first lesson of Chungmuro is simple: trespassers pay. A child is cornered by men with bats. A system warning appears, declaring private property. Then, the turrets materialize. Gong Pildu, one of the 10 evils, has turned space itself into a weapon. His armed zone creates automated defenses, and his faction charges fines as if the apocalypse were a business model. 500 coins, 1,000 coins, tenant status revoked, pay or be erased. Dokja reads the situation carefully. Gong Pildu is not a normal brute. His skills revolve around ownership, calculation, leadership, profit, and defense. He is a landlord in the most literal and monstrous sense, protected by the defense master and backed by magic power high enough to make reckless attacks suicidal. Yet Dokja still challenges the system around him. He exposes imposters, negotiates through information, and tries to reach the real Gong Pildu. But every conversation in Chungmuro has a gun barrel hidden behind it. The conflict erupts. Dokja blocks with a shield. Li Xunsong steps in beside him, and Zhang Hiwan remains unconscious behind the line. Dokja knows that if she does not wake soon, someone will die. Then the balance shifts. Yu Junghyuk appears, exposing an imposter and stepping into the battlefield like a blade given human shape. Dokja's omniscient reader's viewpoint reaches stage 2, and the encounter becomes a duel of perception before it becomes a duel of weapons. Yu Junghyuk refuses to call Dokja a companion, but Dokja understands him better than anyone should. He activates character list, and the information is overwhelming. Regressor, pro gamer, absurd stats, high-level combat skills, unknown sponsor. Yu Junghyuk is not just strong. He is the kind of strong that makes other strong people feel fictional. Yet he hesitates to kill Dokja. Not from mercy, but from calculation, promise, and irritation. That hesitation is all Dokja needs to survive the conversation. A countdown begins. 1 hour and 30 minutes. Then 1 hour. The third main scenario is approaching, and Dokja makes a decision that surprises even his allies. Yu Junghyuk can wait. Gong Pildu is the immediate problem. Without Pildu's cooperation, or territory, surviving the next phase becomes nearly impossible. Zhang Hiwan awakens Hour of Judgment, a power that feels like justice sharpening itself into a weapon. Meanwhile, Gong Pildu hides in the largest green zone in Chungmuro, surrounded by supplies and turrets, terrified of leaving the range of his own armed zone. Then, the system announces Main Scenario 3. Green Zone. Survive 7 days. Occupy a green zone. Endure monster waves every midnight. The reward is 1,000 coins. The failure condition is blank, because no one needs the system to explain what happens when monsters find you without shelter. The final rule is the cruelest. If someone else has a room, you are allowed to steal it. Dokja explains the green zones with the calm of someone reading a disaster manual, while standing inside the disaster. Some rooms hold 1 person. Some hold 5. Gong Pildu's territory can hold dozens. The group splits to search, promising to regroup before the scenario begins. But Dokja already suspects the truth. Chungmuro is full. There are no empty rooms left. The only way to obtain shelter is rent, negotiation, or violence. The Constellations watch as Dokja checks his records, but even they cannot fully read the mysterious text file connected to ways of survival. That secrecy should comfort him. Instead, it deepens the mystery of who sent it and why. Then the violence spikes. Inside a supposedly safe green zone, blood spills, and Gong Pildu is struck down in a shocking ambush. Sanctuary is revealed as an illusion. If people can kill inside the places meant to protect them, then safety is no longer a location. It is a temporary agreement between creditors. A female swordswoman guards her room with dual blades, ready to cut down anyone who crosses her boundary. Dokja does not fight her. He speaks with steady calm, even as tears betray the pressure behind his eyes. She recognizes his strength and withdraws, calling him master with reluctant respect. But respect does not solve the group's problem. There is no room. The rent is absurd. The monster wave is minutes away. So Dokja lays out two choices. The safest option is to take a green zone that fits exactly 5 people. The problem is that 5 people are already inside it. Killing them would guarantee survival. His companions recoil. Gil-young offers to do it, fearless in a way that makes the adults more horrified than reassured. A companion confronts Dokja with the memory of Gumho, where he killed because survival demanded it. Dokja does not deny the blood on his hands. He only refuses to let that blood become his identity. If trust breaks now, he tells them, they all die. The third main scenario begins, and Chungmuro answers with teeth. Ground rats pour from the tunnels. Horned beasts crash forward with glowing eyes. Every instinct screams to retreat. Dokja gives the opposite order, run toward them. His allies hesitate for only a heartbeat, then follow, because by now they understand that Dokja's insanity usually has a hidden reason. The reason is buried in the scenario structure. Some green zones are hidden, attached to walls, visible only once the scenario begins. The brave do not find shelter by waiting. They find it by moving into danger before everyone else understands the map. Dokja touches the wall and reveals a hidden green zone, a shielded space that saves them from immediate slaughter. Li Xiangsung holds back a monster with raw strength, but the system punishes Dokja's aggressive solution. Existing green zones begin to disable. The rules are changing while the game is already in motion. The battle stretches toward dawn. Dokja swings a sword lit with energy, coordinates with allies using bats and blades, and still doubts himself. If he poured every coin into his stats, could he match Yu Jung-hyuk? He does not know. That uncertainty gnaws at him harder than the monsters. He asks why he keeps helping people when he might survive alone. The answer is not heroic. He knows stories where lone survival collapses. He knows that a person who lives alone in an apocalypse may survive the day and lose the reason to continue. Dokja admits the truth. He is not the main character, not the hero, not the savior. But when Gil-young is threatened, the distinction stops mattering. Dokja raises a glowing shield, activates Bookmark, and leaps through the horde, carrying the boy. He spots the opening he needs, and refuses the voice that says he will die. Under the uncomfortable gaze of Constellations, Dokja cuts forward. Dokja uses the Spectre's stones, placing the crystal in his mouth and activating a method he learned through hidden knowledge. The effect is immediate and terrifying. Monsters burn with blue flame and shift into spectral forms. More importantly, humans transformed into specters can slip past monster senses. It is the perfect survival trick, except for the cost. Trauma floods the mind of anyone who uses it. Dokja's fourth wall, the barrier that normally separates him from unbearable immersion, begins to weaken. Memories stab through him. A woman from a hidden past stands over a fallen figure in his mind. The system warns him that his defense has lost authority due to excessive immersion. For the first time in a long while, Dokja's knowledge is not enough to protect him. He collapses into a blank mental space, gasping, unsure whether the person approaching is Yu Jung-hyuk, a hallucination, or something worse. The woman is blonde, foreign, and speaks Korean with impossible confidence. Dokja scans her with character list, and what he sees changes the scale of the story. Anna Croft, a legendary prophet. Precognition, retrocognition, insight, clairvoyance, lie detection, mental barriers, and the ability to cross spatial limits by entering consciousness. She is not merely someone who sees the future. She is someone who tries to shape it. Yet even her introduction is layered with deception. Dokja's detection exposes lies, and his knowledge of rare items, great demon's eyes, and faction dealings unsettles her. For a moment they stand inside a battlefield of identity, rather than blades. Then Fourth Wall begins restoring its authority. Dokja's immunity to Welcome Prison returns. He is pulled back from the mental space, frustrated by the timing, and shaken by Anna's arrival. In the darkness, a desperate voice calls for Hyung. Dokja, wakes to tears, relief, and the smell of blood. Permanent level 1 activates, another quiet signal that surviving death has changed him. Yu Song-a, Lee Hyun-sung, and the others are relieved, but Dokja refuses to celebrate. The day's scenario has ended, not the disaster. It is only 8:30 in the morning, half an hour after the nightmare paused. Then Dokja asks for Gil-young. Silence answers first. The boy has been seen with Yu Jung-hyuk. That single detail turns relief into suspicion. Why would Gil-young be near him? Was it rescue, coercion, loyalty, or something Dokja failed to predict? Elsewhere, a priest-like man speaks with a young boy in a language Dokja cannot understand. The boy refuses an invitation, and the meaning of that refusal hangs like a blade in the air. Dokja rejects an offer to gain power faster by changing allegiance. Omniscient Reader's viewpoint activates again. He is exhausted enough to close his eyes, but not safe enough to stop planning. The next move has already begun.